So soon after the peak that was the ABCD side story, we were graced with the arrival of the Arisugawa Student Council. So, could Donuts strike gold twice, or was this story a flop? Well, let's start with what actually happens. This side story starts with a new character named Sakuya. She's a stickler for the rules and the student council president. She holds a zero-tolerance policy for shenanigans, even trying to call out our disciplinary committee Incho Haruna as disturbing the peace. In fact, she holds a grudge against Haruna, who she sort of sees as her rival. This is because both she and Haruna are similarly strict with the rules, yet unlike Sakuya, Haruna has friends. Yes, that is the reason. Haruna, on the other hand, could not care less about Sakuya, and this drives her insane. Because of this, she tries to find a reason to pick a fight with Haruna, and gets the idea that Lyrical Lily's existence is diminishing the discipline of the students. In order to try and get Lyrical Lily's activities suspended, and with the help of her vice president Ayumi, they recruit two new characters, Hitomi, who they basically kidnapped, and Ryaru, who is that really her name? I'm not calling her that. These two overhear that Lyrical Lily is worried about the chairman who has recently fallen ill, and that they want to expand their DJ activities, and they misinterpret that to mean they tried to assassinate the chairwoman and are planning a terrorist attack on the school. What? Like, are we back in Crossbeat? I feel like at this point in the video, I should explain the term idiot plot. The idiot plot is a term referring to any story or plot where the events that unfold would not have happened if all the characters involved were not complete idiots. And I feel like that fits very well here. The pair that spies on Lyra Lily admits that they basically didn't understand more than 5 words of that conversation, yet they come to some insane conclusion about an assassination attempt, and Sakuya and Ayumi are just dumb enough to believe that, I guess. Well, Sakuya believes them. Ayumi is kinda just there for the ride. Honestly, Ayumi feels like the only one who isn't a complete idiot, which means she's got full knowledge of the situation while making her decisions, which doesn't make her an idiot, but it does make her an asshole. Anyways, since they're affiliated with Lyrical Lily, Hayate and Kokoa also become targets of the investigation by Hitomi and the Loud One. But our two spies are caught because, well, they're idiots. They lie that they were following them because they were interested in DJing, and this leads to Unicorn proposing that Yoba send a DJ to Arisugawa to teach students about DJing. That leads to a meeting between the two school student councils, and in this meeting, Noah, my goat, is instantly able to call out Sakuya's bullshit, which is the fact that she's trying to basically take down Lyrical Lily without any experience of what DJing actually is. The Arisugawa Student Council tries it out, and Sakuya is about to come to the conclusion that DJing isn't so bad, when who but the instigator herself should pipe up and say that an exchange of culture implies that their own culture isn't good enough, and that should be taken as an insult. Then, Little Miss Petty doubles down and challenges Saki to DJ with choir hymns on the spot. Now, she thinks that this will put Saki off, but our precious baby from Photon is just built different, and she pulls it off, after which Ayumi gets angry and storms off. The president chases after her, and we get a, quote, reveal that Ayumi has basically been pulling the strings the whole time and manipulating Sakuya into having no friends, and I'm just gonna be honest here, I saw this coming from Chapter 1, Episode 1. I have to say, if you were to compare the two side stories, I much prefer the characterization in the Doggo story. They're just more fleshed out in my opinion. Ayumi is basically a generic manipulative Yuri protagonist, which makes Sakuya a spineless bumbling idiot who can't make decisions for herself. Hitomi is basically just shy, and the other one is like Noah, except instead of cute things, she's obsessed with Yuri and Ojo-sama culture. Which in itself isn't too bad, but we all know how Donuts tends to handle gag characters. At this point, none of them are awful, except Ayumi, but like none of them really stand out as super well written either. Back to the story, since Saki accepted and passed the challenge posed by the other student council, they invite the Yoba units. Abyssmare, now a Yoba unit by the way, says that they don't really care what happens to Arisugawa, so Kyoko and Rinku start saying that, oh, they'll just be left behind as the representatives of Yoba. And this doesn't work because Neo can clearly see that they're just rage baiting, and she's too smart to fall for that. Veronica, however, is not. So they end up joining the Yoba unit to visit, and we get some shenanigans. Then Hitomi shares her backstory with Hayakoko. Basically, Hitomi once made a friend, but ended up staying out too late playing with them one day, so her mom erased that friend from her entire life. Her mom also happens to be on the board of directors of the school, and since she's already got a grudge against DJing, it's pretty easy for Ayumi to convince her to try banning DJ activities at the academy. Ayumi then uses Hitomi's trauma against her, and not like to stop her from like foiling her plans or anything, just cause she like felt like it. Which, what the hell? Hayate and Kokoa get wind of this plan to get rid of Lyrical Lily, and Haruna goes to ask Sakuya about this. And then Sakuya gets mad at Haruna for not being able to read her mind. Crazy. Sakuya, hearing her own reasoning out loud, comes to the conclusion that we've been at for the past 3 entire chapters. It's stupid. The plan is stupid. She agrees to try and withdraw the DJ ban and somehow feels qualified to tell Hitomi not to lie to herself, despite having Ayumi control 95% of her actions for the entire time she's been on screen. Lyrical Lily and the other members of the student council who aren't manipulative assholes try to convince the board of directors to let the rest of the students DJ, and it goes pretty well, but Ayumi is now missing. And I swear to God, if they try to make me feel sympathetic for her, I'm gonna— oh my god! Well, at least they didn't try to justify her actions. They went for the broken but broken together ending, which, you know what, I guess it's better than the alternative. So, how did they do? Well, I liked that Noah and the rest of Photon weren't easily tricked and saw through their bullshit right away, and the fact that Hitomi and her mom didn't make up instantly was a good choice writing-wise. In fact, Hitomi was probably the best part of this story. She had a pretty well done, if a little cliche, arc about expressing herself despite being raised not to, and her bonding with that thing was pretty nice. That being said, you can probably tell from the tone of this video up until now, I did have a few problems with the story. It feels like they were scared to lean into the new characters like they did with Doggo. The ABCD side story was 90% Doggo with cameos from the main cast. The Arisugawa Student Council, on the other hand, felt like it was relying on established characters as an anchor, which is a shame because I feel like the story could have been improved by being told from the perspective of one of the student council members, specifically Hitomi. I know they're at Arisugawa, so it would be a little weird if they didn't give Lyrical Lily any focus, but it just feels like they didn't trust the characters to stand on their own, and it ended up feeling more like a Lyrical Lily story than an Arisugawa Student Council story. It also doesn't help that if you like Lyrical Lily, you're basically rooting against the council all the way until the last chapter. And all this kind of resulted in the council members all feeling just kind of meh. The story itself felt really contrived in some places, and like the whole thing could have been resolved with a single conversation at any given time, but hey, I also had issues with Crossbeat and its stories, yet I enjoyed them all the same. So what about this one? Well, I'm gonna be honest, the difference between this and Crossbeat is that Crossbeat was at least fun to read, while this story kinda felt like a drag. You have the Yuri sniffing character who barely reacts to the literal official Yuri couple, and Hayakoko. You have a student council president who is so far in her delusions that hearing herself talk is all it takes to convince her that she's wrong. You have an entire plot based on miscommunication, which is kind of just frustrating to watch at times, and you have Ayumi, who is Ayumi. It's just a little bit unfun, you know? But hey, we got to see Fumina, so that's cool, I guess.